One hair. That is all it took. Not a confession, not a witness, not a single fingerprint. Just one strand of hair. Thinner than a thread, smaller than a secret, and it brought a killer to justice after 7 years of silence. This is a story about a murder so perfectly planned that investigators called it impossible to solve, and the one microscopic mistake that proved them wrong. This will make you realize that no matter how carefully a person hides the truth always leaves something behind. The body was found on a Tuesday morning in October 1987. A woman named Helen Marsh, 38 years old, a school teacher from a quiet suburb of Leeds. She was discovered by her neighbor, who had noticed that Helen's front door was slightly open and her lights had been on all night. Helen was lying in her living room. There were no signs of forced entry, no signs of struggle. The house was immaculate, every cushion in place, every dish washed, every surface clean. It looked less like a crime scene and more like a show home. The cause of death was poisoning, a rare, odorless, colorless compound that had been placed in Helen's evening tea. Whoever had done this had not broken in. Helen had let them in herself. She had sat with them, talked with them, perhaps laughed with them, while they waited for the poison to work. The thought was so cold, it made the investigating officers go quiet for a long time. Detective Raymond Cole was assigned the case. He was 51 years old, 27 years on the force, the kind of detective who moved slowly and thought deeply and never said more than he needed to. He walked through Helen's house 3 times before he said a single word to his team. Then he said, someone she trusted completely, someone she was completely comfortable with. This was not a stranger. The investigation began. Helen's life was examined from every angle. She was well liked by all accounts, quiet, kind, devoted to her students. She had no known enemies, no complicated history, no large amounts of money. On the surface, there was no obvious reason for anyone to want her dead. But Detective Cole did not believe in surfaces. He began with Helen's personal life. She had been divorced for 4 years from a man named Helen Marsh. The divorce had been, according to friends, reasonably amicable. No dramatic conflict, no bitter court battle. Philip had remarried within a year. He had an alibi for the night of Helen's death, a work dinner with 12 colleagues, all of whom confirmed his presence. Cole noted the alibi, then he set it aside and kept looking. He discovered something small. 3 weeks before her death, Helen had told a close friend that she was worried about something. She had not said what exactly, only that she had found out something that she did not know what to do with. The friend had not pressed her. Helen had not brought it up again. Cole sat with that information for 2 days. Then he went back to Helen Marsh. Helen Marsh was charming in the way that certain people are charming. Effortlessly, instinctively, like breathing. He answered every question smoothly, cooperatively, with just the right amount of sadness about Helen's death. His new wife sat beside him, calm and supportive. His alibi was solid. Everything about him said, wrong man, move on. Cole noticed that Philip's hands were completely still the entire time he talked. Most innocent people fidget slightly during police questioning, not from guilt, but from nerves. Philip did not move at all. Cole had seen that stillness before. It was the stillness of a person who had rehearsed. But rehearsal is not evidence. Cole needed something real. The forensic team had combed Helen's house with extraordinary thoroughness. Every surface had been wiped clean, professionally clean, in a way that suggested the killer had worn gloves and understood forensic procedure. No fingerprints, no fibers, no footprints. The teacup had been washed and replaced in the cupboard. Whoever had done this had planned meticulously and executed perfectly. Almost perfectly. Deep inside the armchair where Helen had been sitting, tucked into the gap between the cushion and the inner seam, invisible to the naked eye, forensic technicians found a single hair. It was not Helen's. It was darker, slightly coarser, approximately 6 centimeters long. It had a root attached, which meant it had not been shed naturally. It had been pulled, caught, perhaps on the fabric of the chair during a moment of movement. One involuntary moment. One fraction of a second of carelessness in an otherwise flawless plan. In 1987, DNA profiling was brand new. So new that many courts were still debating its validity as evidence. But Cole pushed for the test. it took 4 months to process. When the results came back, they matched Philip Marsh. Philip's alibi, it emerged under renewed investigation, had a gap. The work dinner had ended at 9:30. Helen's estimated time of death was between 10 and 11. Philip lived 12 minutes from Helen's house. His new wife, when interviewed separately and more carefully, admitted that Philip had left the house that night after she was asleep and returned before morning. She had not mentioned it before, she said, because he had told her it was nothing. She had believed him. Philip Marsh was arrested on a Wednesday afternoon 7 years and 3 months after Helen's death. He said nothing when they put the handcuffs on. He looked, witnesses said, less like a man being arrested and more like a man who had always known this moment was coming. Like he had been waiting for it, somewhere deep inside himself, every single day. He was convicted in 1995 and sentenced to life imprisonment. At the trial, the prosecutor held up a small evidence bag containing the single hair and said to the jury, "This is what a perfect murder looks like when it is not quite perfect enough." Helen Marsh's students, now grown adults, attended the trial in large numbers. They sat quietly in the gallery and listened to everything. When the verdict was read, several of them wept. Not because justice had finally arrived, but because it had taken so long. Goodbye for now, and I will see you very soon in our next story.